Nobody wanted to marry the virgin widow until the mountain man came. Maria was born in a small village tucked at the edge of high, rugged mountains. The kind of village where everyone knew everyone, and where life moved slowly, guided by the rising and setting sun, the seasons, and the simple rhythm of work and family. Her house was modest, a single-story cottage with whitewashed walls and a small garden out front, but it was always full of warmth. Her parents were hardworking and loving, teaching her the value of honesty, kindness, and perseverance from a young age. They didn't have much money, but Maria had all the love she could ask for, and a childhood filled with laughter, outdoor games, and long walks through the fields and hills that surrounded their home. From the moment she could walk, Maria loved being outdoors. She would wander along the narrow paths between the fields, chasing butterflies, listening to the birds, or picking wildflowers for her mother. She was curious about everything, asking endless questions about the world, about people, and about life. Her father often smiled at her curiosity, though sometimes he shook his head at her endless questions. Her mother, on the other hand, encouraged her, telling her that curiosity was a gift and that it would take her far in life if she learned to use it wisely. Maria was not the kind of girl who sought attention or tried to impress others. She had a quiet beauty that drew people to her without her even realizing it. Her dark hair framed her soft face, and her eyes had a gentle depth that made people feel understood when she looked at them. But more than her appearance, it was her nature that made her special. She had a kind heart, always ready to help her neighbors, care for the sick, or comfort someone who was sad. The villagers noticed this, and while some admired her, others simply took it for granted, thinking it was normal for a girl to be so caring. But Maria never expected recognition. She simply did what felt right. As Maria grew older, she began helping her parents more. She learned to cook, to sew, and to tend the small farm behind their house. She knew which seeds grew best in which soil, how to care for the chickens, and how to keep the small vegetable patch thriving even in the harshest months. Her work was never done, but she approached it with patience and a quiet determination that impressed everyone around her. She did not complain, even when the days were long and the sun harsh, and she always found time to help others who needed her. It was during these years that Maria's sense of independence grew. She learned that life was not always easy, but with hard work, patience, and kindness, one could find small joys even in the simplest tasks. When Maria was 19, she met Thomas. He was from the same village, a young man with a gentle smile and steady hands. Thomas worked as a carpenter, crafting furniture and small wooden items that people in the village used every day. He was quiet, not the type to boast or show off, but there was something in the way he looked at Maria that made her heart flutter. Unlike other young men in the village who seemed more interested in wealth or status, Thomas valued honesty, hard work, and kindness. Their first meeting was simple. Maria had been walking home through the fields when Thomas offered to help her carry a basket of vegetables she had picked. They spoke briefly, laughed over a small mistake with the basket tipping over, and parted ways without knowing that their lives were about to change forever. Over the next few months, Maria and Thomas met often, sometimes by chance, sometimes with intention. They would talk about their dreams, their families, and the little things that made life meaningful. Thomas admired Maria's strength and independence, while Maria admired Thomas's patience and quiet wisdom. Their friendship grew slowly, naturally, without pressure or rush. They spent afternoons walking through the hills, sharing stories and learning about each other's worldviews. It was a gentle, tender connection, one that did not need grand gestures to feel significant. In a village where life was simple and straightforward, their bond felt like a secret treasure, one they both cherished deeply. Eventually, their friendship blossomed into love. It was not a dramatic affair filled with passion and tension, but a steady, comforting love built on trust, respect, and shared values. Maria felt safe with Thomas, and Thomas felt inspired by Maria's heart. The villagers began to notice, and while some quietly approved, others whispered about the young couple, noting how different their relationship seemed from the rushed, chaotic romances they had seen around them. But Maria and Thomas did not mind the gossip. They were happy in each other's company, and that was all that mattered. Soon after their engagement, Maria and Thomas were married in a small ceremony at the village chapel. The entire village came to celebrate, bringing food, flowers, and blessings. Maria's parents could hardly contain their joy, and Thomas's family smiled proudly at the union. The day was filled with laughter, music, and dancing, simple yet full of life. Maria wore a modest dress, handmade by her mother, and Thomas had a new shirt carefully stitched by his sister. They exchanged vows quietly but with sincerity, promising to support each other through life's joys and hardships. That day, Maria believed she had found the partner she had always hoped for, someone who understood her heart and would walk beside her through every challenge. But happiness, as Maria would soon learn, can sometimes be fragile. Only a few months after their marriage, Thomas fell ill. It started with a cough that would not go away, a fever that came and went, and a fatigue that left him weak. Maria tried everything she could, home remedies, prayers, visits from the village healer, but nothing seemed to help. Thomas's condition worsened rapidly, leaving Maria desperate and frightened. She stayed by his side day and night, holding his hand, speaking to him softly, and refusing to leave him alone even for a moment. She prayed for a miracle, for some sign that they would overcome this, but the mountain of illness was too strong, and the young couple's dreams began to crumble. One quiet evening, after months of struggle, Thomas passed away. Maria held him in her arms, tears streaming down her face, feeling a part of herself break away with him. The village mourned with her, offering words of comfort, but Maria felt a profound loneliness that words could never reach. She was young, barely 21, and yet she faced the impossible task of continuing her life without the man she loved. The home that once echoed with laughter now felt empty, and every corner reminded her of what she had lost. Her parents tried to console her, but even their love could not fill the hollow ache in her heart. In the weeks and months that followed, Maria withdrew from many of her usual activities. She continued her work on the farm, cooked for her parents, and helped the villagers when needed, but her heart was heavy with grief. People in the village whispered about her, calling her unlucky, or suggesting that perhaps her future would be difficult because of her widowhood. As a young widow, she faced not only sorrow but also judgment. Some villagers avoided her, uncertain how to interact with a woman who had suffered so much yet remained so young. Maria felt the sting of isolation, but refused to let it break her spirit completely. She knew that she had to survive, to keep living, even if life seemed unfair. Despite the tragedy, Maria remembered the love she had shared with Thomas. It was a quiet strength that remained with her, guiding her actions and reminding her that love was not something to be feared. She tended her garden with care, fed the animals, and continued her work with a determination that amazed her parents. She began to find small joys again, watching the sunrise over the mountains, feeling the breeze on her face, or hearing a bird sing in the morning. Slowly, she realized that even after loss, life could offer moments of beauty and peace. Her grief remained, but it became a part of her, a shadow she carried alongside her growing resilience. As the seasons changed, Maria began to think about her place in the village and the future she might still have. She was still young, capable, and full of potential, yet she knew the path ahead would not be easy. People may have doubted her, judged her, or whispered behind her back, but she refused to let their opinions define her. She had loved deeply, suffered profoundly, and survived against the odds. That strength, quiet though it was, became the foundation for the life she would continue to build, day by day, step by step. Maria had faced the cruelest twist of fate a young woman could face, yet she remained standing, her heart still open, her spirit still determined to find meaning and perhaps, one day, happiness again. After Thomas's death, Maria's life changed in ways she could never have imagined. The once lively cottage felt silent, the echoes of laughter and conversation gone with him. She continued to care for her parents, tend the garden and manage the small farm, but each task carried a weight she had never felt before. Even the simplest chores seemed harder, and the world felt colder, emptier. Though she remained strong outwardly, inside her heart was heavy with grief. Every morning she would wake up expecting to hear Thomas's voice, only to remember that he was gone. The pain was constant, like a shadow that refused to leave her side. Life in the village became more complicated for Maria than she had anticipated. People were kind at times, offering food, assistance, or sympathy, but there was also a noticeable distance. As a young widow, she was treated differently, and whispers followed her wherever she went. Some villagers seemed unsure how to speak to her, as if touching her life too closely might somehow bring bad luck. Others were curious about her future, wondering if she would ever marry again. The words were never cruel outright, but the judgment was unmistakable. Being a virgin widow was unusual, and in the eyes of the village, it seemed to place her in a strange, lonely category, someone who belonged neither to the past nor to the potential future of a family. Maria felt the sting of these unspoken words deeply. She had been young when she married, and her love for Thomas had been pure and real, yet it left her in a position that many found difficult to understand. Suitors were hesitant to approach her. Some were intimidated by her tragedy, worried that she carried too much sorrow. Others assumed that she might be broken, emotionally fragile, or that her past would interfere with a new relationship. For Maria, this was painful. She longed for companionship and understanding, yet the world seemed to close doors wherever she looked. Friends tried to encourage her, telling her that life would bring new opportunities, but even their kind words could not erase the loneliness she felt in her heart. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Maria's routine became a quiet rhythm of work and solitude. She woke early, tending to the animals and the vegetable garden. She carried water from the village well, prepared meals for her parents, and mended clothing when needed. Though these tasks were simple, she performed them with care and dedication, refusing to let her grief overwhelm her sense of duty. She found small satisfaction in keeping the farm alive and the household running smoothly, but inside, she often felt like a ghost moving through the life she once shared with Thomas. Memories haunted her, the way he smiled when the sun hit his face, the sound of his laughter echoing in the hills, the gentle way he held her hand on quiet evenings. Each memory was bittersweet, a reminder of love lost and a future that had been stolen. The villagers' reactions did not make it easier. While some offered genuine sympathy, others whispered behind her back, wondering if she would ever remarry or if she would remain alone for the rest of her life. Maria overheard fragments of conversations when she walked through the market or visited neighbors. "Poor girl, so young and already widowed," they would say. "Who would want a woman who has already lost her husband?" Sometimes, the whispers were accompanied by pitying glances or awkward nods. Maria tried to ignore them, focusing on her work and her parents, but the weight of judgment was impossible to completely escape. She began to realize that her grief was not the only obstacle she faced. Society itself seemed unwilling to embrace her as she was. At first, Maria tried to shield herself from these judgments. She walked quickly through the village, avoided crowded gatherings, and limited her interactions with neighbors. She did not want to appear weak, and she certainly did not want to invite unwanted pity. Yet, even in isolation, the loneliness persisted. Some evenings, she would sit by the small window of her cottage, looking out at the fading light over the hills, wishing for someone to talk to. someone who could understand her without asking questions or offering advice. She missed the simple joys of companionship, the warmth of a shared meal, the comfort of a hand held in understanding, the quiet conversations that filled hearts without needing grand gestures. The absence of these things made her evenings long and silent. Despite the loneliness, Maria refused to let despair consume her. She found solace in small routines that reminded her of Thomas, not in a way that trapped her in grief, but in a way that honored the love they had shared. She continued to walk through the fields he had loved, tending to the wildflowers and vegetables they had planted together. She spoke to the animals as if Thomas were still nearby, sharing the daily news of the farm, and she sometimes hummed the songs they had once sung together. These rituals brought her comfort, a quiet sense of connection to a life that had been full of love, even if it had been short-lived. She learned to balance mourning with living, grief with duty, and memory with hope, even if hope felt distant and fragile. During this period, Maria also began to reflect deeply on herself and her place in the world. She realized that she had grown stronger through her suffering. She had faced a tragedy that could have broken her, yet she continued to wake each day, perform her duties, and care for those around her. She discovered reserves of patience, resilience, and independence that she had not known she possessed. Her grief taught her empathy, helping her understand the pain of others, and allowing her to comfort those who struggled in ways she could not have before. While the world seemed cold at times, Maria learned that her inner strength was a light that could guide her, even in the darkest hours. Yet, the question of companionship lingered in her heart. Deep down, Maria still longed for someone to share her life with, someone who could see her beyond her widowhood, someone who could understand her without judgment. She dreamed of laughter again, of quiet conversations by the fire, of hands held in warmth and trust. But as months passed, she began to doubt whether such a person existed. The village offered no prospects, and even the young men she once knew seemed hesitant or uninterested. The fear that she might remain alone for the rest of her life weighed heavily on her, but Maria refused to lose hope entirely. She believed, quietly, that life sometimes held surprises, even for those who had already suffered deeply. Her parents noticed her struggles and did what they could to support her. They reminded her of her strengths, encouraged her to engage with neighbors, and tried to lift her spirits when the days felt particularly heavy. Yet they too understood that Maria's path would be difficult. They could not shield her from society's judgments, nor could they replace the companionship she had lost. Their love provided comfort, but it could not fill the void left by Thomas. Maria accepted this truth with quiet courage, knowing that she had to rely on herself more than ever, and that her future would be shaped by her resilience as much as by fate. Over time, Maria began to reconnect with the village in small ways. She visited neighbors to help with chores, offered advice to younger women learning to manage their households, and shared stories with the children about the mountains and the fields. Slowly, people began to see her not just as a widow, but as a capable, strong young woman who had survived great loss. Yet, even with this growing respect, the whispers never completely disappeared. She was still a virgin widow in the eyes of the village, someone whose life did not fit neatly into their expectations. And still, the loneliness lingered, a quiet companion that reminded her of what had been taken from her. As the months turned into a year, Maria's life settled into a routine of work, reflection, and quiet observation of the village around her. She learned to cherish small joys, the scent of flowers in the garden, the taste of fresh bread, the laughter of children playing nearby. She also learned patience, understanding that life was not always predictable, and that love and companionship sometimes arrived in ways one could not foresee. She began to feel a sense of cautious hope, a quiet belief that her story was not yet complete, and that the future might hold happiness, even if it was still hidden from view. Through all of this, Maria never stopped dreaming. She imagined what it would be like to love again, to trust another person with her heart, and to share her life with someone who understood her past but did not let it define her. Though the villagers might doubt her, and though society's expectations weighed heavily upon her, Maria held onto her belief that love could return, that happiness could be found, and that she was deserving of both. Her grief had taught her the value of connection, the importance of resilience, and the strength that came from facing life's challenges with courage and integrity. In the quiet evenings, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Maria would sit by her window and look out at the horizon, imagining the possibilities that lay ahead. She knew the path would not be easy, that judgment and loneliness might continue to shadow her steps. Yet she also knew that she was capable of facing whatever came her way. Her heart remained open, her spirit remained strong, and her hope remained alive, ready for the day when life might bring someone into her world who could walk beside her, respect her past, and help her build a new future. Life continued quietly for Maria, with the days blending into one another. She kept herself busy with her farm, her parents, and helping her neighbors, yet a quiet longing remained in her heart. She sometimes wondered if companionship would ever come again, if she would ever meet someone who could see her as she truly was, beyond the whispers of the village. The loneliness she had carried for months was still there, but Maria had learned to live with it, to find comfort in small routines and the beauty of the mountains that surrounded her home. Little did she know that her life was about to change in a way she could never have imagined. It was during one early spring morning that the first sign of change arrived. A stranger had moved into a small, abandoned cabin at the edge of the village, near the forest and the lower slopes of the mountains. The villagers whispered about him, calling him the Mountain Man. His name was Elias. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with rough hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work, and a face weathered by the sun and wind. He kept mostly to himself, rarely visiting the village, and when he did, he carried an air of quiet confidence that made people both curious and cautious. Some villagers speculated about his past, wondering why he had come down from the mountains to live among them, while others simply avoided him, unsure how to approach someone so different from anyone they knew. Maria first noticed Elias when she was walking along the path near her farm. She saw him chopping wood, moving with strength and precision, each swing of the axe deliberate and measured. There was something about him that drew her attention, not just his physical presence, but a certain calmness in his movements, a quiet patience that seemed to reflect a life lived in harmony with nature. She stopped to watch for a moment, feeling a strange sense of curiosity and caution. Unlike the villagers who whispered and gossiped, Elias appeared untouched by their judgment, focused only on his work and the world around him. Over the following weeks, their paths began to cross more often. Sometimes Elias would be walking through the village, carrying bundles of firewood or supplies, and Maria would notice him from a distance. Their first conversation happened by chance. Maria had been carrying a heavy basket of vegetables to the market when one of the handles broke, and the contents threatened to spill onto the path. Elias happened to be nearby and stepped forward without hesitation. "Here, let me help you with that," he said in a deep, steady voice. Maria looked up, startled by his sudden appearance but grateful. Together they lifted the basket, securing it so nothing would fall. That brief interaction was simple, yet it left a lasting impression on Maria. There was kindness in his eyes, a calm understanding that made her feel safe, even in a world that had often felt cold. As days passed, Elias began visiting her farm more often. Sometimes he helped with heavy tasks, like moving firewood or repairing fences. Other times he simply sat with her, talking about the mountains, the forest, and the quiet beauty of life away from the village. He spoke of survival, patience, and observing the world with respect and care. Maria listened, fascinated by his stories, finding herself drawn to the way he saw life, not in grand gestures or hurried ambitions, but in simple, meaningful moments. For the first time in a long while, she felt her heart respond not with sorrow, but with curiosity and warmth. Maria was cautious. Her past had taught her to protect her heart, and she was wary of becoming attached too quickly. Yet, Elias was different. He did not ask about her past or judge her for her widowhood. He simply valued her presence, her company, and her strength. Over time, she realized that she felt comfortable around him in a way she had not felt with anyone else since Thomas. The initial curiosity blossomed into a quiet friendship, built on mutual respect and understanding. They laughed together, shared stories, and worked side by side on the farm. Maria discovered that trust could grow slowly, and that patience and kindness could form the foundation of something meaningful. The villagers began to notice their interactions. At first, they whispered and speculated, some disapproving and some intrigued. "Who is that man, spending so much time with the widow?" they would ask. Others, however, observed more carefully and began to see the genuine connection forming between Maria and Elias. Unlike previous suitors, Elias did not bring judgment or expectation. He only brought support, understanding, and a steady presence. Slowly, the whispers began to shift from curiosity to admiration, as people saw that Maria's heart seemed to brighten, that her spirit was lifting after months of quiet sorrow. Despite the growing closeness, Maria faced inner struggles. She had been hurt deeply once, and the fear of loss lingered in her mind. Could she allow herself to care for another person? Could she trust her heart again, knowing how fragile life could be? These questions weighed on her, but Elia's steady presence provided reassurance. He never pushed her, never demanded anything from her, and never tried to change her. Instead, he listened, encouraged, and shared the burdens of daily life with her. Gradually, Maria began to feel a sense of hope she had not known in months. It was a delicate hope, cautious and tentative, yet it was real, and it gave her strength. Their friendship soon deepened into something more profound. Maria found herself anticipating Elias' visits, looking forward to the sound of his voice and the simple conversations that now meant so much. She realized that she was laughing more often, feeling lighter, and even dreaming about the future in ways she had stopped doing long ago. Elias, too, seemed to value her presence in his life, admiring her resilience, her kindness, and the way she faced each day with quiet courage. Together, they discovered that love did not need to be rushed or dramatic. It could grow slowly, gently, and meaningfully, like the plants in Maria's garden, nurtured with patience, care, and time. The turning point came one afternoon during a storm. The rain poured heavily, and the wind howled through the mountains. Maria was tending the animals in the barn when a sudden gust of wind blew part of the roof loose, threatening to collapse. Panic surged through her, but before she could act, Elias arrived, having noticed the storm from a distance. Without hesitation, he helped secure the roof, calming Maria with his steady presence and guiding her through the dangerous task. That day, Maria realized not only his physical strength, but also his unwavering reliability, his willingness to be present in moments of fear and uncertainty. It was a lesson in trust, and it strengthened the bond between them in ways that words could not capture. After the storm, they sat together by the fireplace, drying off and warming themselves with tea. The conversation flowed easily, touching on hopes, dreams, and the simple joys of life. Maria felt a connection she had almost forgotten, one that combined safety, respect, and the possibility of love. She realized that Elias was not just a helper or a friend. He was someone who could walk beside her, someone who could understand her past without letting it define their future. In that quiet, rain-soaked moment, Maria felt a shift in her heart, a recognition that life could still bring happiness, even after tragedy. As the weeks and months passed, their relationship continued to grow. Maria found herself sharing more of her thoughts, her dreams, and even her fears with Elias. He listened without judgment, offered advice when needed, and celebrated her strengths. The villagers, seeing their growing closeness, began to change their perception as well. Those who had once whispered now nodded in approval, recognizing the genuine bond between the two. Maria began to feel a sense of belonging not only with Elias but also within the community, as people started to respect her choices and acknowledge her strength. Through it all, Maria learned an important lesson. Love could return in unexpected ways, and the past did not have to dictate the future. She had faced immense grief, societal judgment, and loneliness, yet she had survived and discovered resilience she did not know she possessed. Now, with Elias by her side, she realized that life was not over. It was simply beginning a new chapter. A chapter where trust, patience, and kindness formed the foundation of love, and where her heart could heal while still opening to new possibilities. As the seasons changed, Maria and Elias grew closer, their bond deepening into a relationship built on trust, patience, and understanding. Yet despite the growing affection between them, life was not without its challenges. Maria's past loss and the whispers of the village continued to weigh on her. She sometimes felt a knot of fear in her chest, wondering if allowing herself to love again might lead to heartbreak. Elias, aware of her hesitation, never rushed her. He understood that trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned, nurtured, and respected. With each passing day, he proved his commitment not through grand gestures, but through consistency, reliability, and quiet acts of care. The villagers, too, continued to present challenges. While many had begun to accept Elias, there were still some who questioned his intentions. "Why is he spending so much time with the widow?" they would whisper. "Is he after her land or her farm?" Maria could hear these murmurs from time to time, and although she tried to ignore them, their weight was sometimes difficult to bear. She had learned long ago to live with judgment, but this time it felt different. Elias had become her companion, her confidant, and the thought of others doubting him, and by extension, her own choices, was upsetting. She often had to remind herself that their bond mattered far more than the opinions of those who could not understand it. Despite these external pressures, Maria and Elias faced internal struggles as well. Maria had grown strong through grief and solitude, but opening her heart fully to another person required vulnerability she had not practiced in a long time. She feared losing someone else, feared that tragedy could strike again, and feared that her heart might once more be left broken. Elias, gentle yet persistent, encouraged her to share her feelings and fears. He never criticized or judged her hesitation. Instead, he offered understanding and reassurance. "It's okay to feel afraid," he would say. "You've endured so much, and it makes sense to be cautious. But I am here and I am not going anywhere." His words, simple as they were, carried immense weight, and slowly Maria began to let her guard down. Together, they faced practical challenges on the farm as well. Elias had skills that complemented Maria's, and she discovered that teamwork could be a source of joy. They repaired fences, planted new crops, and tended to the animals side by side. Some days were exhausting, especially when the weather turned harsh, but they found satisfaction in shared effort. Maria realized that part of love was not only companionship in joy, but also partnership in labor and life's mundane struggles. The farm, once a place of quiet solitude, now became a space of laughter, collaboration, and mutual support. Even the small victories, like fixing a broken roof or harvesting a healthy crop, felt sweeter because they achieved them together. As they worked, Maria also began to confront old fears and insecurities. She remembered the whispers and judgment she had faced as a widow, and for a while, she wondered if her past would forever shadow her future. But Elias never wavered in his support. He treated her with respect, admired her strength, and showed her that her past did not make her unworthy of love. Through his actions, Maria began to believe in the possibility of a life where her history did not define her. She learned that love could be healing, not just emotionally, but spiritually as well. Every kind word, every shared task, every quiet moment together reinforced her belief that trust and companionship could grow even after profound loss. Their relationship also brought subtle changes to the village. People who had once whispered began to observe Maria and Elias with curiosity and, eventually, with respect. They saw that Maria's happiness was returning, that her laughter was more frequent, and that her farm was thriving under their combined care. Slowly, even the skeptics began to reconsider their opinions. While judgment never disappeared entirely, it became easier to ignore because the evidence of genuine partnership and affection was undeniable. Maria began to feel a sense of belonging again, not just with Elias, but within the community that had once doubted her. The whispers that had once caused pain now seemed like distant echoes, unable to penetrate the strength she had developed. Despite these positive changes, life was not without its trials. One particularly harsh winter tested both Maria and Elias. The snow was heavy, and the wind cut through the village with a chill that made even the simplest tasks difficult. The animals needed care, the crops had to be protected, and the roof of the cottage required urgent repair. Alone, Maria would have struggled, but with Elias by her side, the work became manageable. They spent long hours shoveling snow, repairing damages, and ensuring that the farm survived the bitter cold. Through these challenges, Maria realized that love was not only about comfort and companionship. It was also about facing adversity together, supporting one another when life demanded strength, and finding courage in unity. During these trying months, Maria also reflected on her own growth. She had endured loss, isolation, and judgment, yet she had survived and learned from each experience. She had discovered inner strength, resilience, and the capacity to love again. Elia's presence amplified these qualities, encouraging her to embrace life fully and without fear. She recognized that personal growth and emotional healing were not instantaneous, but required time, patience, and the willingness to confront both external and internal challenges. Each day brought new lessons, whether through hard work, quiet reflection, or shared moments with Elias, and Maria embraced them with gratitude and determination. In addition to practical struggles, Maria and Elias also navigated emotional and interpersonal challenges. Occasionally, Maria's fears and insecurities would surface, and she would worry that Elias might grow tired of her caution or her need for reassurance. Elias, however, remained steadfast. He demonstrated that love required patience and understanding, especially when one partner carried the weight of past pain. Through gentle words and consistent actions, he reassured her that he valued her, not despite her past, but with full recognition of all she had endured. This understanding fostered deep emotional intimacy, teaching Maria that trust and love could coexist with vulnerability and cautious optimism. Through all these experiences, Maria and Elias began to imagine a shared future. They discussed possibilities for expanding the farm, helping the village, and building a life together that balanced work, love, and community. These conversations, while practical in nature, carried a profound emotional significance. For Maria, they represented hope, a vision of a life that was not defined by grief or isolation, but by partnership, purpose, and shared dreams. For Elias, they represented an opportunity to stand beside someone he admired deeply, someone whose strength and resilience inspired him. Together, they envisioned a life that honored both their pasts while creating something new and meaningful. By the time spring returned, Maria's heart had opened fully to Elias. She realized that love did not erase pain, but it could coexist with memory, healing, and growth. Her experiences as a widow, her struggles with societal judgment, and her solitary months on the farm had prepared her to appreciate the depth and quiet strength of Elia's love. They had built a partnership rooted in mutual respect, shared effort, and unwavering support. The bond they shared was no longer tentative. It had become a source of joy, security, and hope, capable of sustaining them through life's inevitable challenges. As the village began to recognize the strength of their relationship, Maria felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. She no longer feared judgment or whispers. Instead, she focused on the life she was creating with Elias. Together, they celebrated small victories, shared quiet moments of joy, and faced each challenge as a united team. Maria understood that love was not merely a feeling but an active choice, expressed through patience, kindness, and commitment. With Elias by her side, she felt ready to embrace whatever the future might hold, confident in their shared strength and unwavering bond. Through struggle, growth, and shared effort, Maria had transformed. She had moved from a place of grief and isolation to a life filled with hope, companionship, and resilience. Elias had not only provided love but had also helped her rediscover herself, her strength, her courage, and her capacity to trust again. The village, too, gradually accepted their relationship, recognizing the depth of their bond and the positive influence they had on the community. Maria's journey through hardship had taught her invaluable lessons about patience, trust, and the enduring power of love, preparing her for the next chapter of life with a heart open and ready to embrace happiness. With each passing day, Maria felt her life changing in ways she had once thought impossible. The quiet companionship and steadfast support of Elias had transformed her world. The farm, which had once felt heavy with solitude and sorrow, now buzzed with life and activity. The animals thrived under their care, the crops flourished, and the once silent cottage echoed with laughter and conversation. Maria had learned that happiness was not always a sudden spark. Sometimes it was a steady warmth that grew slowly, nurtured by patience, kindness, and shared effort. With Elias by her side, she discovered a joy she had feared might never return, a quiet, steady, and deep contentment. The villagers began to notice the change in Maria as well. Those who had once whispered behind her back, questioning her choices and her future, now observed her with a mix of respect and admiration. They saw the way she carried herself, with confidence, grace, and a strength that had been forged through hardship. They noticed the warmth that Elias brought to her life, and the way she seemed to radiate hope and resilience. Slowly, the skepticism that had shadowed her days faded. People no longer saw her as the young widow whose fate had been marked by tragedy. They saw a woman who had endured, grown, and embraced life once more. Her story became an example in the village, a quiet testament to the power of perseverance, hope, and love. As the seasons moved forward, Maria and Elias continued to build their life together. Their days were filled with practical work, from tending the farm to repairing fences and planting new crops, but these tasks were no longer burdens. They were opportunities to share, collaborate, and create something meaningful together. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, talking about their dreams, their plans, and even their fears. Elias never demanded anything from Maria. He listened, understood, and encouraged her. In his presence, she found safety, not only physical but emotional and spiritual. For the first time since Thomas's death, she allowed herself to dream freely, to imagine a future that was not shadowed by loss, but brightened by love and possibility. Maria also found that her own confidence and independence had grown alongside her relationship with Elias. She was no longer the hesitant, cautious woman who had once feared judgment and loneliness. She had learned that strength was not just about surviving hardship, but about embracing life fully, even when uncertainty loomed. She took pride in the farm, in her ability to manage tasks on her own, and in the way she and Elias complemented each other. Their partnership was built on equality. each offering their skills, their support, and their hearts. Through this, Maria realized that true love did not diminish individuality. It enhanced it, creating a bond that was strong because it respected each person's unique strengths and experiences. As their love deepened, Maria and Elias began to think about the future in broader terms. They discussed expanding the farm, helping neighbors with tasks that required more hands, and even teaching younger villagers some of the skills they had mastered together. These conversations were filled with hope and optimism, a sharp contrast to the quiet fear and doubt that had once filled Maria's heart. She realized that life was no longer something to endure, it was something to embrace. Every plan, every idea, every shared goal became a thread in the tapestry of their shared life, strengthening the bond between them and anchoring Maria's heart in trust and love. The challenges that came with life in the village and on the farm continued, but they no longer felt insurmountable. Storms, harsh winters, and occasional illnesses tested their patience and resilience, yet Maria and Elias faced them together. Through these difficulties, Maria discovered the profound power of partnership. She learned that love was not only about joy and comfort, but also about facing adversity together, supporting each other when the world was harsh, and finding strength in shared effort. Each challenge they overcame became a testament to their commitment, deepening their connection and reinforcing the foundation of trust and respect that had grown between them. Over time, the village's perception of Maria transformed completely. Those who had doubted her strength or judged her for her widowhood now sought her advice and guidance. They admired the way she had rebuilt her life, not in spite of hardship, but through it. Maria, once the quiet, sorrowful widow, had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and courage. Her story inspired others to believe in the possibility of renewal, demonstrating that even after loss, life could offer companionship, purpose, and joy. She understood that her past had shaped her, but it did not define her. She was free to create a future that was hers, built on love, effort, and the relationships she valued most. Maria and Elias' relationship continued to blossom as the years passed. Their partnership was not marked by grand declarations or dramatic moments, but by steady, consistent care for one another. They celebrated small victories, the first sprouts of a new crop, a repaired roof, a well-tended garden, with genuine joy. They supported each other through minor illnesses, disappointments, and setbacks, always offering encouragement and reassurance. In their shared life, Maria found a sense of security she had never known, a feeling that her heart could rest and trust fully once more. Through this experience, she realized that love's true power lay not in passion alone, but in the quiet strength of consistency, understanding, and mutual respect. In addition to building their life together, Maria also found time to reflect on her own growth and journey. She thought about the months and years of grief that had once seemed endless, the judgment and isolation she had endured, and the fears that had sometimes paralyzed her heart. Looking back, she recognized that each challenge had taught her valuable lessons about patience, resilience, and the importance of self-respect. She understood that her capacity to love again had been strengthened by these experiences, and that her heart had grown in ways she could not have anticipated. Elias had not erased the past, but he had helped her embrace it, learn from it, and move forward with courage. The emotional fulfillment Maria experienced with Elias extended beyond the personal to the community around them. The villagers, seeing their bond and the strength it represented, began to value not only Maria's presence, but also the lessons she embodied. Young women looked to her as an example of resilience and self-respect, while others admired the partnership she had formed with Elias. The couple became quietly influential, not through wealth or status, but through integrity, compassion, and the demonstration of love built on mutual respect. Maria realized that her journey, while deeply personal, had a broader impact. Her story of survival and renewed hope was a beacon to others navigating challenges of their own. As life moved forward, Maria and Elias faced the natural cycles of joy and challenge together. They celebrated births, successes, and small milestones, and supported each other through disappointments, losses, and occasional hardships. Maria found that the combination of love and resilience created a life rich with meaning and purpose. She no longer feared judgment, loneliness, or the unknown. Instead, she embraced each day with confidence, knowing that her choices, her strength, and her love for Elias had created a foundation capable of sustaining them through whatever life might bring. Her heart, once heavy with sorrow, was now open, trusting, and full of hope. Eventually, Maria reflected on her life with a sense of profound gratitude. She remembered the young woman who had once walked through the village in mourning, weighed down by loss and whispers. She remembered the fear, the loneliness, and the uncertainty that had filled her days. Yet she also remembered her own resilience, her commitment to living fully, and the quiet hope that had never left her heart. Meeting Elias had been a turning point, but it was her strength, patience, and willingness to embrace life despite hardship that had truly allowed her to find happiness again. She understood that love was not only about companionship, but also about mutual growth, respect, and the courage to face life together. In the end, Maria's journey reached a place of fulfillment and peace. She had rebuilt her life, cultivated love and partnership with Elias, and found her place within the village once more. The quiet laughter that now filled the cottage, the thriving farm, and the mutual support they shared became symbols of a life well lived. Maria understood that happiness was not a destination, but a process, shaped by the choices she made, the love she nurtured, and the strength she had discovered within herself. She had endured sorrow, faced judgment, and learned patience, yet she emerged stronger, wiser, and capable of embracing the joys that life offered. Through her experiences, Maria realized a profound truth. Life's hardships do not define a person, but they shape their strength, character, and capacity for love. She had learned that grief could coexist with hope, judgment could coexist with self-respect, and solitude could coexist with companionship when one remained open to possibility. With Elias by her side, she had discovered a love that was steady, understanding, and deeply fulfilling. Together, they looked forward to the future with confidence, knowing that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together, their bond strengthened by trust, patience, and the shared experiences that had brought them to this moment. Maria's story, once filled with sorrow, had transformed into one of love, resilience, and redemption. The young widow who had once walked alone through the village had become a woman who embraced life fully, trusting in her strength, her heart, and the partnership she had built with Elias. She knew that the future held both joys and challenges, but she no longer feared them. Instead, she welcomed each day with gratitude, hope, and a sense of peace that came from knowing she had endured, grown, and found love once more. Her journey had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a life of fulfillment, companionship, and quiet happiness, the kind of happiness that is hard-earned, deeply felt, and never taken for granted.